And we're recording.
Okay, so we'll be talking about the effects of family violence on child behavioural development with a specific focus on how children develop aggressive behaviours. So these slides will be separated into 4 subsections, one being the introduction to some developmental concepts, then a case study, as well as a broader perspective on developmental implications and some interventions that would benefit child development. So just to introduce the topic, we've got some background info and developmental concepts again. So I'd like to start by defining child abuse as a social and public health problem and a child human rights issue. It's any behaviour by parents, caregivers, or other adults that fit outside the norms of conduct and entails substantial risk to physical or emotional harm. It does also fit into 2 subcategories, which is intentional or unintentional. Intentional being with intent to harm, and unintentional could be neglect. So we've got 3 main focuses of forms of child abuse: maternal drug use during pregnancy, ineffective and harsh parenting, as well as exposure to child's environmental abuse. The teratological risks we know happen in this time called the sensitive period during the 2nd trimester, which is when fetal cocaine usage damages the frontal lobe of the fetus brain, and it is responsible mainly for executive function, which is the child's ability to control their emotion, behavior, attention, memory, problem solving, and social skills. Neurodevelopmental outcomes emphasize the child's ability to self-regulate their emotions and their ability to regulate them in stressful contexts such as family violence, and how they exhibit externalizing behaviors such as aggression due to their inability to regulate their emotions. And this is seen mainly in children who were exposed to cocaine during that prenatal period. From an attachment perspective, we know that after birth, that parent-child bond really determines the outcomes of the child's ability to regulate their emotions, as well as their security in the relationship, and again does shape the child's social, emotional, and neurological development. From that perspective, we know that the parenting quality determines the self-esteem and independence of a child, again affecting coping strategies in family violence. And if parental modeling is ineffective, that child takes a parent's emotional response, such as aggression, and turns it and establishes it as a normal response to an emotional event, transferring it into different contexts such as relationships and school. And finally, we have exposure to violence on a broader spectrum. So I'll just touch upon this very quickly. We have the microsystems such as family, but we also know that exosystems such as community and neighbourhoods play an important role, and macrosystems such as cultural beliefs and values, such as stigma for disclosing violence. But mainly direct and indirect violence. We know that direct violence, such as that intent of harm, and indirect violence, such as witnessing, if both include psychological and physical victimization, there is more chance of a child developing aggression. So these aggressive behaviors appear as early as 6 years of age, and unfortunately, These children are more likely to be future victims or perpetrators of violence. Now we have a case study, and I'll hand that over to Vanessa.
All right, so I'll be talking about the case study today, which looks at the, sorry, could I please see the next slide? The pathways from early family violence to adolescent reactive aggression and violence victimization. So the study explores the influence of these environmental risks such as family violence, parenting style, and maternal substance abuse on the development of aggression, specifically in the adolescent period. Additionally, it goes on to outline the effect of child abuse on a child's interactions in their social environment, so those micro and exosystems. The two types of aggression we'll be looking at today is reactive physical aggression, that's aggression defined by an impulsive and retaliatory aggressive act, and reactive relational aggression. So that's aggression defined by an intent to harm through the relationship or threat of the removal of that relationship. So the details of the case study we looked at were that it was a longitudinal study where 216 mother-child dyads were surveyed and observed at different stages of development. So this had to do with how the mother and child interacted with each other, if there are any signs of aggression between the two of them, and also the mother's drug use. So they were surveyed multiple times during the first 36 months of life, so the early childhood period, again in second grade, the middle childhood period, and then lastly at 12 to 15 years of age during early adolescence. So the study used a developmental cascade model within ecological framework. So this allowed for the impact of different forms of child abuse and their influence on development to be assessed empirically. The developmental cascade model provides insight into how the different environmental risks interact to affect emotional regulation across the stages of development. So how developing aggression during middle childhood can lead to violence victimization. The ecological framework then demonstrates how these environmental risks go on to predict behaviors such as aggression and then further affect their environment, not only in the home life, but also outside. So the results of the study showed a direct link between prenatal substance abuse and the development of reactive physical aggression in early adolescence. It then went on to outline that power assertive discipline within the household can affect the child's social development, causing them to act out at school and become isolated from their peers or more likely to be the victim of violence later on. All in all, the study showed how different forms of child abuse can have a severe impact on a child's development and emotional regulation, which can further affect not only their home environment to create a cycle of this power assertive discipline and like reactive aggression, but also go on to affect them in their social environment. So those micro and exo systems again. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the implications of family violence on child behavioral development from an ecological perspective. Alrighty, so the ecological systems theory developed by Yuri Bronfenbrenner alludes that child development is affected by multiple levels of the surrounding environment, starting from the micro level of family and friends, going further into the meso levels, which include school and extracurricular activities, and then moving into the macro levels of society, which is the justice system, political circumstances, and even social media platforms that the individual is living within and amongst. The implications of family violence on an individual in their micro and meso level can start off with the way that they communicate and interact with others due to trauma. Family violence victims can become quite unsettled and uncomfortable quickly as their brain processes constant thoughts of fear and uncertainty. This is due to them not knowing when others are going to actually react to them in violence and being afraid. So therefore, they are known to shut off mentally and even verbally, which can lead to depression if not dealt with properly, or they can react physically through violence in an act of self-defense. The issue with this is that there may not be a present danger to them at the time, but due to past trigger words or trigger actions which have affected them mentally, they react in an abrupt and even harmful manner towards themselves and others close to them, like family and friends. This links to the reactive physical and relational aggression discussed earlier with Vanessa. The sad part about family violence victims, especially in their premature age, is that they continue to go through their physical and relational aggression into their teenage and adult years, quite a few of them go forth to consider what they went through as a norm. So they either settle down to do it to their partners, or they take it on from their partners, so they don't actually see it as a problem. And this leads to the generational effect of family violence as well. This also proves that individuals in the victim's meso role will be affected by family violence also. Family and friends that don't know about the violence may actually put labels on the child, calling them naughty, misbehaved, not actually understanding and analyzing where this violence and this behavior is coming from. But also, on the other hand, family violence can also create disturbance and conflict in the household, furthering into breaking down of the household and divorce and separation, which can further affect the child also. Alongside family and friends, society has a role to play in the levels of family violence in communities locally, nationally, and internationally. According to the New South Wales Communities and Justice Department, domestic and family violence is estimated to cost the New South Wales economy more than $4.5 billion each year. Family violence is seen to be linked to socioeconomic levels, so people that are in lower socioeconomic levels of areas, and that's also where levels of alcoholism, drug use, and mental health issues are quite high also. Family violence can also lead to children potentially finding themselves in the justice system due to the physical aggression they may inflict on others.
So the case study analysed how maternal substance use in pregnancy and childhood can allude to higher levels of physical aggression in early adolescence. This finding highlights the necessity of strategies and intervention services for maternal substance users to assist in minimising the effects of drug use on child development. The specific risks and needs of a maternal drug user are large, and integrated programs are recommended. These integrated programs not only target the women's physical health, but also their social and mental health needs alongside the child's needs through services such as prenatal childcare, child-centered services, and parenting programs. 2 studies were compared for women participating in integrated programs to women in no treatment control programs. It was made evident that the integrated programs were more effective, where 782 clients showed a negative urine screening, whereas 610 no treatment control participants had a negative urine screening. Furthermore, women participating in integrated programs are significantly more likely to continue to display negative urine results opposed to women in no treatment control. The maternal substance users discussed in this specific study would greatly benefit from integrated programs, as by the 36-month assessment, 50 children were in non-biological parent care, which range from foster and kinship care. These integrated programs could have assisted with the child remaining in the mother's care, as it provides parenting programs and child-centered services which benefit both mother and child. Furthermore, research has provided evidence in the effectiveness of a relationship-focused approach when working with maternal substance users. Unresolved trauma is generally associated with substance abuse, where learning to recognize and initiate positive relationship acts as a crucial step in the recovery process, especially for mothers that are substance dependent. This process can possibly assist in a healthy mother-child relationship. Espinet's 2016 study on maternal substance use showed that relationship-focused interventions supported maternal confidence in resisting temptation to use again in the future. A substantial benefit was analysed with the mother's mental health issues, where a reduction in depression and anxiety was evident. This intervention would greatly benefit the women discussed in the chosen case study, as it tackles in assisting substance use whilst improving mental health issues, furthering the likelihood of the mother to stay motivated to discontinue substance use and develop a healthy relationship with the child. Thanks.